How are you? Good to see you.
Hey man, I was watching an interview with Charlie. I completely disagree with him in the final 5 minutes with your breakdown of Mamdani, and I have the data to
Do
prove it.
it.
But your
Go.
show, so you tell me where you want to go, buddy.
No, no, no. No, I want to, I always believe in, I always have like a bunch of questions that I want to ask. Um, but I would much rather just keep the conversation going. And I did toy with the idea of putting you both on at the same time today, but I do love the format of talking to people one at a time. Maybe I'm an old fashioned guy and watch too many Tim Russer. Remember the old show, Tim Russer? It wasn't the Meet the
Yeah,
Press
yeah.
show. He had like, he did the side hustle show. And I always loved it when he would talk to people one on one. Wajahat, go on about Mamdani because I am endlessly fascinated by what took place in New York, and I want to get your take on this. And so, please
All
fire
right.
away.
So I know Charlie. Charlie knows me. I agree with him on a lot, but I'll also
Yeah,
disagree with him on this point because I believe
please.
him and many others who, and I don't use it as a pejorative when it comes to old as an age. I'm talking about mindset. An old
Yeah,
guard mindset that is entrenched in establishment politics, that missed the wave that you actually touched upon in your interview, that
yeah,
people want hope, people want change. The
they
establishment
do.
or the institutions that you and I grew up with are not working for people. And so people say, you're talking about restoration, right? Biden, he had his strengths and his weaknesses, but Biden was also semi-transformational. He didn't get there, but you talking about restoration. And people are like, why should we restore to an institution that did nothing for me? I want reformation. Now, here's the numbers. The sum of the people who voted for Zoran Mamdani also voted for, wait for this, kids, Donald Trump. In the 2024 election, some of the
That's
people who voted
so
for Donald
true.
Trump voted for AOC. In 2016, I was talking to Mike Madrid, who was a co-founder of Lincoln Project. He's like the Latino whisperer. He said,
Yeah,
with Bernie and even Joe Rogan, who did they say they would vote for if it wasn't for Trump? Bernie Sanders. I think if Bernie would have ran in 2016, he would have been Trump. I think if Bernie would have ran in
I agree.
2024, he would have been Trump. And the reason is the following, folks. People want change. They don't care about the
Yeah.
labels anymore. Democratic socialist, this or that. The Democratic label is like herpes, man. It's like, no offense to herpes. It's worse than Donald Trump.
It's like bed
Democrats
bugs.
have,
You can't,
yeah,
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 I get it. Yeah.
29% favorability, the lowest since 1994. And you and I have been in this game long enough that when the president, Donald Trump, right now is low, people usually gravitate to the other team. Donald's at 38%. Democrats are at 29%. Now, why do I think Zoran is connecting with people? And why do I think it's not just me, it's John Meacham, not a flaming far leftist, is what you and me were called. You, me, and Joe were called far leftists by the New York Post and Fox. We got to talk
I
about
saw
this.
that. We got to talk about that too, but
Yeah.
please keep
But
going
but
because I don't
John
want to interrupt.
Meacham,
You're on a
John
roll here.
Meacham, historian, establishment, said last week,
Yeah.
when you see the pendulum swift, he would not be surprised if you see a AOC president. Now, what was Zoran's key message? It isn't because of his beard. It isn't because he's a democratic socialist. It isn't because he was born in Uganda. His overall message, folks, that's connecting with people. You know what? New York City should be affordable for everyone. And
That's
people are like,
right.
yeah, yeah, you're right. And you know what? Yeah, I don't think we should have billionaires, but they exist. I'll work with them. And you know what? Let's tax the rich. And you know what? Yeah, instead of always helping the landlords, let's help the tenants. And you know what? Let me go hard on the paint. Free buses. And just a data came out today that a majority of Americans
Yeah.
today like Medicare for all. Another issue that the establishment refuses
Oh,
to
I totally
evolve
agree
on.
with you. I
All
think
right,
I
sorry, go
think
ahead.
it, I totally think no, no, no. Please feel free to keep going on a roll here, but you hit on something that I have been. This has been on my mind, and the Mamdani race did kind of cement it in my mind a little bit. That at least on the Democratic side, if you're not talking about Medicare for all on the Democratic side, if you're trying to like the half loaf, Democrats need to give up on the half loaf. The half loaf has just talk about something that's hosed the Democrats over and over again. It's the half loaf. And
Absolutely.
when Obama had, I mean, I guess back when Obama had the votes and he had the 2/3 majority in the Senate, or almost 2/3 majority in the Senate, he couldn't push it through with a by golly. That's what they need to be talking about. And these affordability issues, I think, are maybe a little bit oversold. I think it may be more than affordability.
Well, you see that authenticity and sincerity trump age and
Yeah,
experience. People want fighters, Jim. Anyone who's willing
yeah,
to fight against the establishment. The message is simple. This is the message.
yeah,
It's us versus the 1%, the many
yeah,
versus the billionaires. We got to change the system. But the reason why the establishment, and by establishment, I'm talking about both Democrats and Republicans, it's big money, corporate money.
yeah.
They can't let go. Like what I say is they can't stop sucking at the teat. They can't let go of the acorn. Mamdani comes in and says, I'm not going to take corporate money. I'm not going to take the billionaire
Yeah.
money. We're going to have billionaires. And people are like, yeah, damn it. And then once you see even on Fox, tax billionaires, people are like, yes, tax the billionaires. Why are the
Well,
1%
and
getting
for
everything?
all that, I mean, for all that, I saw Russ Vought was on Fox News saying we're going to put people back to work and all this stuff, making it sound as though that's all that working class folks have been doing over the last several years is just mooching off of the government. The moochers are the ones who made out in this big bullshit bill. The richest
Absolutely.
1% in this country, they got their tax cuts, and everybody else got the shaft. They got
Everyone else
shafted.
got the shaft.
They totally got
And
knifed in prison yard. I mean, it's just totally nuts. And to
And you and I
me,
have the
yeah,
old school memory. We remember in
yeah,
2008, the financial crisis caused by these same people. We gave a bailout to the people who caused the crisis. And
yeah,
now we're getting rid of our Medicaid food supplements for the richest people on earth. So people see the entire system as rigged. Now, I'll mention two last points. I think it's very important for people
yeah.
to realize the shift and why the establishment hasn't moved. And it was a weakness for Joe Biden. I try to keep it fair, Jim. I don't bend the knee to Democrats or Republicans. I give praise where
That's what we
praise is
love
due.
about you.
Democrats, folks, we've been saying it for months. And this is what the mistake was of the Democratic Party in 2024. The YouGov poll that came out a few months ago said the main reason, not the only reason, the main reason why many Democrats stayed at home is they were tired by what they saw was a genocide streamed into their phones. Israel, right? They said that's the reason why we stayed home. The Democratic Party said, shut up. Shut up about this. Shut your mouth. It's either us or the Democrats. Now, you see
Yeah,
Mamdani and others say it's a genocide. I disapprove of it. Some people might agree or disagree, but you saw Harry Enton on CNN last week show the poll. And there's only once before in my lifetime, Jim, that I've ever seen such a
yeah,
radical shift on one issue. It was marriage equality. Folks, me and Acosta got the gray hairs. First Obama administration, I'm for traditional marriage. Next Obama administration, I love the gays, gay marriage.
yeah,
On Israel, folks, the majority of Americans, majority of young people have shifted. And they're
yeah,
asking, why are my taxpayer dollars going to Israel to commit this genocide? This second issue, where you compare and contrast Mamdani to the Democratic establishment. I try to bring receipts and I'll stop, I promise. After Donald Trump's bullshit state of the whatever bullshit address it was, Democrats
yeah,
chose Alyssa Slotkin, the centrist senator from Michigan. The only thing that I remember from her uninspiring speech was that she praised Reagan. The second thing I remember is her war on the woke, the political covered, that she says we need a war on the weak and the woke. Mamdani instead did the following. I'm not going to throw immigrants under the bus. I'm not going to throw transgender under the bus. I'm not going to throw black people under the bus. I'm not going to throw workers under the bus. I'm going to lift us all up, going back full circle. Why can't we have an affordable America for everyone? And that's
yeah.
the message, Jim, that terrifies the 1% and the corporate establishment. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm sorry, it's your show. I had to get that off my
That's
chest.
okay. No, no, no. Well, I appreciate the rant. I love the rant. Feel free to rant anytime on this show. But first of all, I'm glad you brought up Israel. And I mean, Prime Minister Netanyahu is in town. He's with Trump. And
Lovely.
at some point, listen, what happened on October 7th was absolutely horrific. But at some point, I mean, and this is the question that I've raised with lawmakers on this show, at some point you have to wonder when what is happening in Gaza right now boomerangs on Israel, on the United States, on other parts of the world. I mean, my concern is what's happening in Gaza right now is it's so horrific.
Mm,
It's that we have just basically set back this part of the world for decades in terms of
yep.
any kind of realistic peace process. And that's just not good for it. It's not good for America. It's not good for the region. It's not good for anybody. And it just makes me worry that Trump and Netanyahu have formed this alliance that, come hell or high water, Netanyahu's going to get what he wants out of this region. And he's not going to be here when we see the consequences of what may come down the
Uh,
road.
you're absolutely right. And I'm
Yeah.
going to try to do it in 60 seconds because I have a rant, but I'll connect the dots.
Yeah.
Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. The Hamas leaders who committed the terrorist attack on October 7th are a war criminal. The Israeli cabinet is the furthest right that we've ever seen. Ben Gvir, people have explained to me, is like, imagine if you hired a KKK and elected him to be the national security minister. Smotrich, the financial minister, calls himself a proud Jewish fascist and homophobe. The cabinet
Yeah.
of Israel voted for Israel to occupy Gaza and then to remove Palestinians to the south. What does that mean? Ethnic cleansing, a genocide.
Yeah.
Trump has been dogwiled by Netanyahu in the first Trump administration because Netanyahu, whispered to him and made him get out of the U.S.-Iran deal, which was a success. He blew it up, and then again, Netanyahu dogwalked Trump recently and allowed our planes and our missiles to go and then unilaterally strike Iran, which has ratcheted up the tension and led to nuclear proliferation. When the world
Yeah.
sees what's happening in Gaza, sadly, Jim, they don't just see Israel, they see the United States as a complicit partner, the world's most powerful country giving bombs, aid, diplomatic support to Israel that is occupying Palestinians. Israel, in the past year and a half, has committed 35,000 targeted strikes against Houthis in Yemen, against Lebanon, against Syria, against Iran, and Palestinians. And Netanyahu and Trump are criminal birds of the same feather. Trump last week, and what I said on Piers Morgan's show, I said, I will give
Yeah.
Trump credit if he does the one thing that no president has done in my lifetime, and that his America First base, I want to throw open my mouth. We're living in the worst timeline on earth that I actually agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson on this issue. If in his America First approach, he picks up the phone, like Reagan did while Israel was bombing southern Lebanon, and says,
Yeah.
I can't see this anymore. You have to end this, or else I'll stop sending bombs. Trump would have gotten respect from his own base and probably got that Nobel Peace Prize. Instead,
Yeah.
he picks up the phone last week and says, I will withhold support and missiles to Israel unless you do not end these criminal indictments against Netanyahu. Because much like
Yeah.
Donald Trump, folks, for those who don't follow Israel politics, Netanyahu needs to be in power. The second Netanyahu
Right.
ends the war, steps out of power, his own people will indict him. Either he's
Yeah.
already been indicted, convict him, and he'll go to jail. So Netanyahu wants a forever war. He doesn't care about Israel. He doesn't care about the region. He wants to stay in power forever. And his cabinet, folks, is the most extreme government that Israel has ever seen. Listen to their own
He's
quotes.
not
They don't
interested. He's
talk
not
about
interested in
slogans.
peace.
No,
He's
listen
just
to
not
Smotrich,
interested in
Ben
peace.
Gvir.
And I think you're right on the money when you say that he just doesn't want to give up power. And I think to some extent, what we saw happen on October 7th is that he was caught with his pants down, and
Yep.
he's been trying to make up for it ever since. And I'm sorry, but that is just not a partner for peace. And that peace process has to get back on the rails. Talk about things that are going off the rails. I mean, Trump he's just basically yielded that ground to Netanyahu. And this idea that Trump is going to be put up for a Nobel Peace Prize, I mean, it's just the whole thing is absolutely nuts. But watch out, we have to talk about other stuff. And
Let's do it.
I want to talk about the ICE raids because this one really pissed me off. This thing that we saw in Los Angeles yesterday at MacArthur Park, roughly 100 federal agents, this is according to the LA Times, federal immigration enforcement agents, including Border Patrol, other law enforcement officers in armored vehicles gathered along the perimeter of MacArthur Park in Los Angeles' West Lake area in a show of force. And they did this operation there in the park. Karen Bass, the mayor there, apparently stopped her car on the way to City Hall to watch as officers on horseback and soldiers in tactical gear passed by a playground while children at a summer day camp were hurried indoors. I mean, what the hell is going on in this country with these ICE operations and these immigration operations when children at a summer camp have to be hurried indoors? To me, again, we're going to see $80 billion apparently in more border enforcement, what they call border enforcement, but really it's sort of establishing a secret police force in this country.
You're
And
absolutely right.
I don't know how we're going to stomach 3 years of this.
We're not going to be able to stomach 3 years
Yeah.
for it because Donald Trump in October, folks, I keep the receipts and I'm going to bring some receipts on Jim's show. I take Trump literally and seriously, and I'm a masochist. I've been following these people for a long time, people like Stephen Miller. I know their white supremacist agenda. I'm not mincing my words. It's a white supremacist agenda. This is a combination of white supremacy and greed, racism and capitalism in the form of Donald Trump and this current administration. And folks, in that bullshit billionaire bill that's going to cut $1 trillion from Medicaid, what Democrats should have talked about instead of smearing Mamdani on the weekend shows was that it also gives $180 billion to ICE. So now, folks, ICE, I'm not exaggerating, ICE has a bigger budget than some countries' entire budget when it comes to their militaries.
Right.
It goes from 4,000 officers to 10,000 officers. And you have to ask yourself, well, what is Trump going to do? You don't have to think about it. In October, he quoted Hitler yet again and said he was the first president to say, I will unleash the National Guard and the military against the quote enemy from within. I have always brought up that quote because I said take Trump literally and seriously. The day before July 4th, last Thursday, guess what, folks? 300 Marines were deployed where? Not against our enemies abroad, in Florida. You have thousands of agents with Marines of the National Guard terrorizing LA. Not undocumented immigrants. I'm talking about LA. Legal immigrants, undocumented immigrants, citizens. They're picking up people who look brown. You and me are the son of immigrants. Stephen
Yep.
Miller, according to the Wall Street Journal, that flaming leftist publication, deliberately unleashed these agents to Home Depot and 7-Eleven to
Yep.
cause provocation. Why would you want provocation? Because you want a response. Well, what happens when there's a response? Then you unleash, wait for it, the National Guard and the military.
Yeah.
ICE, I'm going to say this, and some other people are saying it, is Donald Trump's Gestapo, his secret police, masked, armed agents terrorizing Americans without any accountability, not showing their badge. And as you said, and we've been saying for a month now, folks, they've gone to preschools,
Yeah.
elementary schools. They were about to go to Dodger Stadium, and thanks to grassroots leadership, Dodgers said, no, 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 don't come.
Yeah.
And the
Thank
question I
goodness the
have for you, Jim,
Dodgers said, "Get the hell out of here." Right.
I have
I
a
mean,
question for you.
we're gonna have.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, to me, when they say, I mean, and I've said this on my show a bunch of times. One of the lies of last year, I mean, obviously was Trump saying that they're eating the cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. The other big lie of last year was we're going to go after the criminals and the gangbangers as part of the mass deportation operations in this country, which was it was just a complete lie. It was just an absolute outright lie. I mean, I've been watching Stephen Miller and Donald Trump play this game for the last 8 years. They just want to change the demographic makeup of this country. And they don't mind putting the country through hell to get to that end result. And they just will not admit it. They won't admit that publicly. But, and I just, if you're going to be these big, courageous MAGA guys like that you claim to be, just come out and say it. Just come out and say that you want the United States of America to be less brown. I mean, at least I would say, okay, well, at least he came out and said it. But they just
Stephen Miller
lie.
says it.
Yeah.
Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon, folks, and again, I'm a masochist, been following them for years. You know what? If I can say it to your audience real quick, their
Yeah.
end game. This is what Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon, when asked by actual press, what books do you recommend? You know what the book they recommend? A 1970s dystopian fictional novel called Camp of the Saints, which is one of the two major pieces of literature that are cited by white nationalists. The other one is Turner Diaries, that radicalized Timothy McVeigh, who before
Right.
9/11 was responsible for the biggest terrorist attack in the United States. What is
Yeah.
Camp of the Saints? It's a dystopian novel that warns of a foreign brown horde that takes over Europe. Stephen Miller has said that one of the worst things that has happened to America is the 1965 Immigration Nationality Act, which removed the restrictive quotas that were put in place for 4 decades. 1965 Immigration Nationality Act that was passed on the heels of the Civil Rights Movement allowed people like my father to come here as a young student. The increase in Asians and brown people that came to America was a result of them taking advantage of the Immigration Nationality Act. And all the data shows that immigrants do three things that Donald Trump doesn't do. They commit fewer crimes than people born in this country. Donald Trump is a criminal. They pay their taxes, even undocumented folks who don't have to pay their taxes. And
That's
wherever
right.
they go, they help the economy. Stephen Miller wants to make America white again by any destructive means necessary, which is why I've always said,
Yeah.
and this is the analogy that even Jonathan Metzl has used in his book, Dying of Whiteness, a great book, that if given a choice between sharing a home with a person like you or me or burning down the house, Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon and that racist part of MAGA will burn down the village. And I give you the self-destruction
Yeah.
of America in the past 6 months, Jim.
No, and listen, I called out Stephen Miller for his white nationalist bullshit way back in 2017 when he and I had that confrontation in the White House
Right.
briefing room over the Statue of Liberty, and he was echoing white nationalist talking points back then, trying to claim that the Statue of Liberty was not a symbol for immigrants coming to this country, and then he proceeded to call me or to say I had a cosmopolitan bias, which if you go back and you look at that rhetoric, comes right out of the white nationalist chat rooms and all that. crazy shit. It's funny that you mentioned MAGA because at the beginning of this conversation, I envisioned that we would talk about this Epstein cover up. Curious what your thoughts are on all of that because, MAGA is not so unified right now.
Nope.
MAGA has been split in two, and all of the right wing goofballs who have been clamoring for the Epstein files over the last several years are up in arms right now. I don't think they know what to do. I think only Charlie Kirk is still on Trump's side in all
Yeah.
of this. I mean, it's kind of remarkable.
I predicted it a couple of weeks ago. I said, folks, uh, I'm a masochist. I've been following these people. This is an issue that won't necessarily crack up MAGA, right? But what I'm
Yeah,
looking at to combat fascism is you want to put cracks in fascism, sand in the gears, death by 1,000 cuts. And, to paraphrase Tropic Thunder, if you know this quote, you know this quote. I can't say it. Never go full conspiracy theorist. They
yeah,
went full
yeah.
conspiracy theorist on Epstein. They radicalized their base for years. It's part and parcel of QAnon and the deep state that you and me are part of this liberal elite run by the Jews who are abducting children and creating a sex trafficking ring. I'm not making this up, folk. And Epstein was at the center of it, and the libs and the Dems were part and parcel of it. And there was a list. Who radicalized the base? Dan Bongino, who's not part of the deep state as deputy director of FBI. Who else
Yeah.
radicalized the base? Cash Patel, who's the FBI director, and Pam Bondi. And now they lied to their base. Pam Bondi said, I have the files right here. And I'm glad Charlie brought the receipts of the binders full of files that were given to libs of TikTok and all these other people. And now they're saying, oh, no, don't worry about that missing minute. Don't worry about the
Yeah.
Epstein files. It's all good. And I don't know if you've paid attention, but while you're on with Charlie, Roseanne's come out. There's a fissure with Roseanne. Benny Johnson, the plagiarist who got paid by Russia, he's come out with a video right now. Tucker Carlson's come out criticizing. Alex
It's
Jones
wild.
lost. It's Alex. It's a fissure.
Alex Jones was crying. Wasn't Alex Jones? He burst into tears or something,
While
didn't he?
driving. Yeah, he was bursting into tears because they feel betrayed. And folks, I'm telling you this: once you radicalize your base, you need red meat. So I did this tweet right
Yeah.
before I was watching you and Charlie, and I did this tweet. I could be proven wrong. I think what Trump did today, clearly, bro. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm like, yo, what are you hiding, bro? Like, what are you
Yeah,
hiding there, right?
I
And
know that I'm not a
he's gonna have to throw
conspiracy
something in
theorist
the bus.
either. He sounded like he got his hand caught in the cookie jar.
Yeah,
And no, I didn't take the cookie. What are you talking about? Why are you still talking about cookies? This
no
is
one's
what he
talking
was
about
saying.
cooking. And you and me know that Epstein, we have him on tape. Michael Wolff said that Epstein said that Trump was his closest friend before they had the falling off. Donald Trump is on record saying, yeah, Epstein, he likes the young girls. He likes them young. And then we saw the video of them partying together, looking at girls. And so you add all this up.
Looking like
And
sleazy dudes. Yeah.
this sleazy girl, I feel he cannot escape this. This is my prediction. If I'm wrong, I'll come back and I'll eat my words. I always admit when I'm wrong.
Wait, you
I
mean he
believe
cannot escape this as in
he has to
like
throw someone under the bus.
he
Someone has to be
interesting.
thrown under the bus for Epstein. And I wonder who it is. Is it going to be Bondi? Is it going to be Bongino? But he's going to have to
Interesting.
give the MAGA wolves some red meat because they're not going to forget this, Jim. They're all right. Listen, Pizzagate. You remind people what happened with Pizzagate. Remember the
Yeah.
guy got radicalized, came in with guns and saying,
No,
right
it's
here in
so
DC.
true. It's right. That's exactly right. But the funny thing about this is that, and it's sort of, I describe it as sort of MAGA inception because they were the ones who were clamoring for the release of these files for years. And I think partly because they were sort of ashamed of all of the video of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, doing that little jig at the party and acting like creeps. And so they had to, for years and years, they've been saying, oh, this Democratic person is in there and that Democratic person is in there. And now this whole thing is blown up in their face. It's completely blown up in their face. I mean, Pam, the fact that they tried to put that memo out over 4th of July weekend, the fact that you have Pam Bondi on Fox saying, I have the list on my desk, and they all played this game for like the last 2 years. Trump,
Yep.
J.D. Vance, Bongino, Cash Patel, they all did it. And now
You're absolutely right. They're the architects of their own disaster. And I think I made a
yeah,
point about that earlier today, is that this is like a textbook on how not to quash a conspiracy. Everything they've done in the
yeah.
past week has fueled the flames where even I'm now, Jim, I'm like, yo, what are you hiding, bro? Like even
I know,
me.
I am too. And I will say that I used to think that this Epstein thing was cuckoo-ness, they would say, oh, he was murdered, it wasn't suicide, and it may end up still being a suicide. I don't know. I really don't know. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it for years because I thought it was just a bunch of Alex Jones, goofball, Benny Johnson bullshit. And now I'm like, why is Trump so defensive about this? And they asked Pam Bondi about the missing minute. It was a New York Post reporter, I think, what's going on with the missing minute and the tape? And then Trump jumps in and tries to answer the question for Pam Bondi.
Yeah, and for all, you need to see that because it goes, there's more important things happening. There's like great things, but there's also tragedies. Why are we talking about this? And it's
Yeah,
like, now we're going to talk about it even more. And that missing minute that you're talking about, folks, Epstein was under suicide watch. There were two guards, and the next thing you know,
yeah,
oh yeah, he killed himself. So everyone was asking, yo, if he's on 24/7 suicide watch, how did he die? And now they, with their own mouths, have kind of confirmed and repeated a story about the missing minute. So if I'm a conspiracy
right.
theorist, I'm like, what missing minute? Who's
Now,
on the farm?
no, and I'm not a conspiracy theory person. And so when you and I are talking about this, I hope years from now people don't take the tape and say, "See, Jim and Wajahad, they're conspiracy theorists, and what the hell's going on?" and blah blah blah, and shame on you. And the reason why I bring that up is because we have to talk about how FoxNews.com came after us.
Oh,
And
awesome.
I try not to call Fox News, but it is the name of the website. FoxNews.com came after us. And it said, two former liberal cable news stars who were essentially discarded by their former networks this year floated conspiracy theories that Trump will rig next year's midterms. This is what FoxNews.com wrote. Ex-CNN anchor Jim Acosta and ex-MSNBC anchor Joy Reid, who were among the media's sharpest critics of Trump's refrain about not really losing the 2020 election, openly speculated next year's midterms won't be on the level. Okay, first of all, I had an interview with James Carville, and we both talked about the notion that Trump might try to pull some shit next year. He
Yep.
tried to pull some shit in 2020. And I love the way FoxNews.com describes this about Trump's refrain about not really losing the 2020 election. He lied. He lost the election and he lied and he incited an insurrection. And you were part of that too, because you were on with Joy.
Yeah, so things go full circle in a beautiful way. And if they're watching, I want them to get triggered by this. I want to bring receipts real quick. Donald Trump incited the violent insurrection. I remember in 2019, go look at all my tweets. I said he will not leave peacefully. I was called crazy, the libtard. What do they say? Trump derangement syndrome. Folks, he did not leave peacefully. To this
You did
day, he
not.
still promotes the lie. 80% of Republican voters believe the lie. He ended up pardoning. I said he would pardon all of them. He pardoned 1,600 violent insurrectionists. He has also said that he wants to terminate the Constitution. This was before the 2024 election. He'll be a dictator for a day. After he got elected, he quoted Napoleon. He flirting with running again in 2028. They release merch. He's quoted
Yes.
Hitler. Like I said, he will unleash the National Guard. And I'll say this on record because I was talking to Joy about this. This man who's a criminal, this man who incited a violent insurrection, this man who has said openly, praising authoritarian leaders, this man who says he wants to, terminate the Constitution, this man who's getting expansive powers by the completely,
Well,
in my opinion, corrupt Supreme Court, just even
yeah.
right now, 30 minutes ago. Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to jump in and just say the New York Times just reported this on July the 2nd. Justice Department explores using criminal charges against election officials. Such a path could drastically raise the stakes for federal investigations of state or county officials, bringing the department and the threat of criminalization into the election system. That's the headline. It's a pretty chunky headline. And then here's the story in the New York Times. Senior Justice Department officials are exploring whether they can bring criminal charges against state or local election officials if the Trump administration determines they have not sufficiently safeguarded their computer systems, according to people familiar with the discussions. Now, to me, right there, that suggests that the Trump administration could possibly harass state or local election officials. I don't think that that's like foaming at the mouth Trump derangement syndrome shit. That is, I'm just reading from the goddamn New York Times
And we also
about what they're
have heard
planning.
We also heard his own words when he picked up the phone and called the Secretary of State of Georgia, Republican,
Yes,
I'm forgetting his name, and said, "Find me the votes to
find me
win
the votes.
Georgia." Yeah, and then we also know, to bring it back full circle, and I'm willing to go there. And anyone who's watching on Fox and New York Post, I'm your far left writer, Wajatali, quote me away. Going back full circle, why would you need to put $180 billion in ICE and create your own personal Gestapo? And being a student of history, well, when you manufacture crises when there are none, because Stephen Miller says we're under invasion, even though we're not, and when you want to
Yeah.
suspend habeas corpus like they do, and when you want to use the Alien Enemies Act, which has only been used 4 times before during wartime, and Stephen Miller thinks we're under war because we're under invasion, and now you have masked agents. Well, I don't know. If I'm a student
Yeah.
of history and things are going really bad for MAGA and Donald Trump, and this is the same man who's a criminal and has threatened or bullied a Republican to find the votes and hid documents and pardoned 1,600 violent insurrectionists and incited a violent insurrection, and threw Mike Pence under the bus, is
Yeah.
it crazy, Jim, to assume that, like dictators of the past, he would create an emergency and say, listen, things are crazy. It's Antifa. It's the war. It's
Yeah.
the Venezuelans. It's the power vested in me as the executive commander in chief to declare martial law. Don't worry. These midterms will come back. We're going to punt them for 2 months. Oh, and
Yeah.
anyone who protests, by the way, in my first administration, I wanted to shoot you in the knee, but Mark Esper said no. But now I have
Yeah.
no guardrails and I have the Gestapo.
Yeah.
I
Well, and you could just sum it up as he pulled that shit before, he might try to pull it again. I mean, that this is what they tried to do in 2020. They tried to overturn an election. That is a fact. That is what they did. And so it passed his prologue. They might try that shit again. I mean, I just, like, I to me, the receipts are already, are already in the bag. We already have the receipts. We have receipts from 4 years ago. And Brad Raffensperger, you're absolutely right, being first among them. I do want to bring this full circle and have a little bit of hope at the end of all of this, because I see the
Lord,
Millennium Falcon over your head right there.
and the
The last
Razor
time
threat.
I think I was on your show, we talked about Andor. I think since we spoke, I finished the second season of Andor. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and we're both Star Wars nerds. So, I mean, are we going to get a season 3? What do we think?
The season 3 will be the American people. Andor season 1, season 2 was fantastic. The creator of Andor seasons 1, season 2, Tony Gilroy, has openly said that Andor season 1, season 2 was based upon human conditions throughout time when it comes to authoritarianism, his words, and
Yeah.
fascism. And what Andor shows you is that average people, average Jose's and Janes, you don't need a lightsaber. None of those people have superpowers.
Yes.
How they get radicalized in real time due to oppression and how they band together. And a great quote from Rogue One, because Andor leads up to Rogue One: rebellions are built on hope.
I love.
I think
I love it.
Jim, the people, they're missing the moment. The establishment is missing
Yeah.
the moment. They're missing people's righteous rage. It's a righteous rage. They're missing people's desperation, their hunger. They're missing people's desire for fighters. And I do believe what we saw with the No Kings rally, what we've seen with people come together for immigrants, what